Hello. So today I'm going to have a quick stream of consciousness about the Orville Season 3, Episode 3, Mortality Paradox. Tala returns from shore leave, and as she arrives, a strange signal leads the crew to a planet that should be a complete barren wasteland, but they're getting readings of a civilization. Mercer, Kelly, Tala, Bortus and Gordon all go to the surface of the planet to investigate what's going on. Except when they land there, they discover a forest but no civilization. And they have a walk through the forest and discover a high school. And obviously very confusing, so they enter the high school and search around because suddenly they can't get out again. And while they're searching, Gordon gets attacked and a bunch of bullies start beating him up and telling him, I can't remember the name of the chap, but a big bad guy's gonna get him after school. So they continue trying to figure out what's going on, and then the bell rings, everyone leaves the school, and so they make their way out as well onto the playing fields. As they're there, they ask where this bully is, and suddenly this great big monster appears, grabs Gordon and is about to eat him. And the instant he's about to be eaten, his eyes change and he kind of almost flicks out of consciousness for a second. Meanwhile, Tyler throws something at the creature drops him, they all run off. They go through a door which leads into an aeroplane, which is obviously kind of confusing. They're told to take their seats, which they do. Gordon explains what happened to him, that he kind of felt like he left his body for a second. And I quite like that, because the number of times shows rely on people not actually saying something that happened when something happens to them. It can be quite annoying. You know, you're just kind of literally shouting at the screen, just tell somebody. If you just tell them, it'll all be figured out quickly. I mean, obviously that doesn't work for the story, but in this case it was quite nice to see that Gordon actually said something. Gordon's aware that there's something wrong with the plane. They all run to the front. There's no pilot there, and so they try and fly the plane, Mercer in one seat, Gordon in the other, and they end up flying towards a mountain, and Mercer's eyes blink as well. I think then they kind of walk back through the door, and they end up in a mortuary on Bortus's homeworld. There's floating pods, and Bortus looks into one of the pods, and there is Kalon. And then Kalon's eyes snap open, grabs Bortus, and Bortus's eyes flash again, so he has the same experience. They continue to move forward when a door appears, and they end up on Tala's homeworld. They see a flashing light in the distance across a lake. So Kelly and Tala decide to cross the lake. As they start to cross, a creature attacks from below. Kelly falls in, is dragged down to the depths, and again has the same experience. Is rescued by Tala, dragged back up to the raft, and then they go back to the shore where the others are. And then another door appears. And Mercer's kind of like, he's had enough. They refuse to go that way, and they discover a hologram projector. A very, very complex piece of machinery. To be honest with you, it looked like it was knocked up by a 5-year-old with a bit of sellotape and paper. It wasn't the most convincing device. They destroy it, or they shut it down, and they suddenly discover they're actually on the empty planet, that there actually isn't anything there. They get back in the shuttle and they go back to the Orville. Meanwhile, Tala actually turns up, contacts the Orville and Lamar's in charge, and basically says, where are you? I'm at the rendezvous point. Now, Lamar's been trying to find the crew because they've completely disappeared, as is everything else on this planet, and it's back to being a barren wasteland. So we go back to Mercer and his group, and they fly back to the Orville. Everybody's there saying, oh, what a relief. Next thing you know, they're being attacked by the Kalon. And they're in a battle, and it's all going terribly wrong. Just as the Kalon's about to smash into the ship, it stops. And they've kind of figured out that something's not right. And they look over, and Tala has changed. And she's changed into kind of, she looks like she's out of Tron, to be honest with you. I was not overly impressed with the design. And it turns out this person is from the multiphasic world the crew discovered a couple of years before. It was the one where Kelly went and helped a child and they created her as a god figure. I'll put the name of the episode in the video. And they basically explained that 50,000 years has passed since they've seen them last, and they've helped themselves progress. So evolution was only getting them so far, but they continued to help themselves progress further. The problem was that their race had become stagnant because of the lack of mortality. If you're immortal, you'll see everything and do everything, but you need to be reminded of the reason to continue. And so the crew's near-death experience gave them that impetus to keep moving forward. Mercer and the crew kind of rebuke them a little bit, not much. And then they go back to the Orville. Everything's fine. And a group of them have a little conversation about immortality, and Mercer says he'd quite like it. So it was an okay episode. It didn't really rock my world. I think the near-death experiences should really have been far more tailored to the people, or had some reason as to why these were their experiences, because it was never really explained. You know, has Mercer got a fear of flying and crashing? Because, yeah, it's a near-death experience, but why was that particularly for him? Because they're supposed to be tailored to the people. Why is Gordon afraid of being bullied at school, then being eaten by a monster? None of it really made sense. It was a little bit too left field for me. You know, the only one really was Bortus and Clydon that had some specific relevance, but even then, is he afraid of Clydon becoming a zombie and killing him? There's no kind of coherence in the actual reasons behind the mortality and the near-death experience. The other thing I found was that when the Tron woman appeared, I just had echoes of Jean-Luc Picard and Q, because obviously this is kind of their version of Q. I couldn't see Jean-Luc Picard being quite so cool about it. Remembering Star Trek TNG, Picard regularly rebuked Q in no uncertain terms. I remember in DS9 Cisco punched him. Their response seemed to be quite mealy, quite pathetic, and not really kind of... You know, Mercer said something about experimenting on people, on creatures, but it just felt a little lackluster, I guess, really. Not to mention the premise presented by the Tron woman. I mean, it was contradictory. You know, they were kind of saying about how they were supposed to have augmented their evolution, presumably with technology, but in doing so and becoming immortal, they'd lost the ability to feel. And then at the same time, she's saying how unnecessary and pointless all the things that the humans allocate worth to are meaningless. And it's like, but you needed some of that to give your life some sort of purpose. It's a very contradictory argument. I just didn't like the end of the episode. I didn't like that moment. I thought the crew should definitely have slammed them a bit harder. You know, there's a bit where she talks about how all the things that humans have a lot meaning to, like man, husband, captain, father, are kind of meaningless. And you just wanted them to turn around and just sort of say, these are the things that make us. Just an argument, just a opposing point of view. Literally wanted them to say, you're saying those things have no meaning, yet you had to use us and our experiences to find meaning for yourselves. It just frustrated me that they didn't actually shout them down, didn't actually there wasn't a conflicting point of view when there should have been. Dave Kalon actually did a really interesting video about this, which he goes into way more depth than I am, about how it all played out, and also some of the elements of the Tron lady's explanation. It was an okay episode. It didn't really rock my world. It should have been better. Visually stunning as always, but just the payoff. The payoff was kind of obvious. I think I probably guessed it halfway through, and I guessed who she was. And it certainly, again, like the previous episode, felt like it was leading to something more, because she makes a comment about, we'll see you again, or we're watching you, or our experience with you is why we targeted you. It was enjoyable enough, but onwards and upwards. Just a reminder that my comic book, Marked, a 228-page graphic novel, is available from my website, as are bespoke caricatures and prints, and the link is in the description below. Thank you very much, and peace out.